Hello everybody. My name is Awande. Thank you so much for this conference. I'm already learning so much. So my question to you is, so you mentioned a lot about music, and I know that not every single artist is about music. Some of us do theater, some people are in film, etc., etc. So how do we, I mean, I'm sure it's also a part on my side to find the creative solution, but how much of the fourth industrial revolution, or technology, so to speak, can we include in live performance mediums like theater? For example, apart from these LED lights that we have, how do we monetize theater in terms of the fourth industrial revolution?
I can speak to that a little bit.
Okay.
I'm not an expert, but from what I know, I think there's also this notion of technology that you use to perform, and then the technologies that support the cultural industry. And if you see yourself as a theatre maker within the cultural industry, then it's also about thinking about how you can collect data about your audiences. You can collect data about how people interact with your content. You can collect data with what time people like to come and see plays, for instance, when you're getting your biggest audiences, that kind of stuff. And the big data, and this is sort of part of the 4IR framework, allows you to bring all of that content together in different ways and then do something with it. So once you've got all that data, how do you then start using the systems around you to make sure that audiences are getting information at certain times, or that you're programming around in response to how people are working? So there's quite a lot of interaction between data that people are putting in versus what you do with that data, and then how you kind of integrate back into the system. So from a cultural industries perspective, there's quite a lot there.
At UJ, where I come from, we've had to interact a lot with technology from a performance perspective. And I think the one caveat I have to put is that 4IR, like all the other industrial revolutions, at this point seems to emphasize more on the tool. And I like a quote, that former President Halema Motlanthe said, that 4IR gives you a tool. It does not replace you as a human being. It gives you a tool to enhance, to do things better, to reach more people, all right? And so there are instances in which a lot of 4IR aspects, especially virtual reality, has been used in theater, among other things. So for instance, you can have instances where you interact with the technology in a VR setting, okay? You can have characters, in multiple places at the same time. You can reach more audiences through your performance, in that through a VR space, you can perform in this theater, and someone else elsewhere in the world can actually see that performance through some of these technologies.
Actually, I realize that I'm underselling myself quite badly, and that I'm actually an interactive digital media artist before I'm a cultural practitioner. And that exact work I've done quite a lot in theater before, and also in dance, where we use sensors. I would have an argument with you about VR, but that's an argument we would have outside. But you can use sensing devices to track bodies, to track motion, to basically then enhance performances. So I've worked before with an artist called Athena Mazarakis, who's a dancer, and sorry, then I'll let you carry on. But what we did, we would track her movements, and her movements would then make music. So we would set up a score of different kinds of sounds, and she would basically use her body to perform the music simultaneously. And at the same time, what you can do is that you can use that same data that's been tracked from the body to put that into a visual outcome as well. So it looks like she's physically moving things around on the screen, but actually it's just the sensors that are kind of taking her information and putting it back in. And I think, just as a quick introduction here, and I won't, we can speak about it maybe in another format, but one of the things that's quite interesting about the way you track bodies is that a lot of that work, specifically in the gaming and the VR and the AR space, which is happening in Silicon Valley and happening with very white bodies, very male bodies. And there's actually a project that is beginning to try and understand if that is the archive of bodily movement that exists for digital technology, what does it mean for digital technology? Does that mean that the kinds of tracking, the kinds of things that can happen are only for those kinds of views? Yeah. So for instance, facial tracking, there's a huge issue with facial tracking being racist, and I do that in inverted commas, because it's been developed under very specific lighting conditions and doesn't see the shadows under the eyes of black people or the shadow under the nose of a black person, because the skin is too dark. So how then, if we were to develop those technologies for ourselves or experiment with them in the theater space, what does facial tracking, what does body tracking mean for different kinds of bodies and different kinds of faces? So I think there's an enormous amount of potential there